from Renaissance-style chateaux, grand country estates, architectural glass masterpieces.
These are the remarkable homes
Simply breathtaking.
and magnificent landmarks
One day, my son, all this will be yours.
at the very heart of Britain's spectacular history.
I have never seen one like this.
Join me
I need to get there with all speed. Onwards, driver.
and a host of celebrities
Oh, crikey.
with a passion for the past
Kaboom! Wish me luck.
as we travel the length and breadth of the nation,
It is between the walls.
and with unparalleled behind-the-scenes access.
From the highest heights
Now I'm through my blind panic.
to the deepest depths.
We'll uncover the secrets
my goodness.
still hidden within these breathtaking buildings.
These are the places that nobody else gets to see.
And explore the riches
How spectacular.
and treasures of one of our most loved institutions.
This is an amazing story. Come on, I want to know the end. I want to know the end.
Welcome to the secrets of the National Trust. This week, I'm in Staffordshire at a spectacular neoclassical stately home. Stretching out over a stunning 900 acres, this mansion plays host to a story of courage, creativity and brotherly love. This is Shugborough Hall. Inherited in 1720 by a trailblazing family who made their mark doing things a little differently.
But its new owners had grand plans, and Shugborough Hall was to undergo major renovations, funded by swashbuckling adventures on the high seas.
These daredevil escapades in uncharted waters enabled the transformation from modest manor house to the architectural triumph we see today. But it isn't just a tale of grand design, as fast forward 200 years and Shugborough became home to a world-famous jet-setting playboy earl, second cousin to the Queen, Patrick Lichfield.
A society photographer, famous for his snaps of the rich, the famous and the regal.
To uncover the secrets behind Shugborough's rich and racy past, I'll be taking to the water,
Wow, that's worth a lot of money.
exploring its extravagant 18th century revamp,
This is not what you expect from the outside.
and leafing through secret letters.
It really brings these people to life, doesn't
Really
it?
does.
I'll also be venturing into hidden underground tunnels
What is this?
and unearthing Shugborough's close connection to royalty and high society.
What a glittering life we had here in the middle of Staffordshire.
Joining me, Miriam O'Reilly heads to Laycock Abbey to see how the work of another photographic pioneer has been given new life for the 21st century.
That is one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life.
And it's back to earth as Lewis Emmerich heads to a hop farm in Kent to discover the harsh realities of living on a 19th century hop picker's wage.
It would be hard, back-breaking work. They would be standing for 12 hours.
Shugborough Hall is the story of two brothers. The first, Thomas Anson, was passionate about architecture. The second, George, was an admiral who's widely regarded as the father of the British Navy.
So, just like George, I'm braving the high seas myself.
Paddling my own canoe, I feel a bit like an admiral.
And expert on naval history, Rod Whiteman, is going to row me through the amazing story of how these two brothers transformed Shugborough.
So, Rod, what are these uncharted waters that we're navigating?
This is a branch of the River Sow, which
Yeah.
was a key component in Thomas Anson's re-landscaping of Shugborough Estate.
Right.
He completely redesigned Shugborough. He actually created a new channel for the river so that he could have the original course running through his gardens uninterrupted by people rowing down it on boats like us.
So what was here when he came, Rod?
Thomas had a medium-sized house and he had a small estate, but it was really just a local manor, not the vast estate that Shugborough has become today.
This was obviously some big scheme then.
That's right. Thomas was able to extend the house, create an entirely new landscape here at Shugborough.
So where did the money come from?
He had new money thanks to his younger brother, George, who was a much regarded and very famous admiral in his time and very successful.
The Navy don't pay that much.
No, the Navy don't pay that much, but George knew about a Spanish galleon laden with silver. He captured it with over 1 million pieces of 8.
Wow, that's worth a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, about £400,000 at the time.
This audacious raid was the catalyst to George's meteoric rise from a mere ship's captain to leader of the entire British Navy. As news spread of his daring global exploits, his fame and fortune grew.
He'd gone from being a captain living on naval wages to a man of independent means. As an admiral, he was seen by many as being the father of the Royal Navy.
So he brings all this money back here, and his brother, who is the arty and architectural one, he spends it, is that right?
George had plenty of money to spare.
Mind you, I'm looking at this weather and it's a bit threatening, and there's a chance we might get pirates ahead. I think we'd better put in soon.
That sounds like a very good idea to me.
Safely back on dry land, I want to learn more about George's buccaneering exploits and that famous battle that changed the fortunes of this grand house forever. So I'm meeting the Trust's Helen Royal.
Hello, happy to see you.
Inside this spectacular neoclassical hall, I'm getting a rare glimpse of a hidden treasure.
Sir George Anson must have been something of a legend in the British Navy, wasn't he?
He was a bit of a legend. He basically set up the Royal Navy as we know it today.
Helen's showing me George's original and extremely precious journal of his epic round-the-world voyage on board his good ship Centurion.
A voyage round the world. And when you see it was in 1740, that's not like going on the Queen Mary now, is it?
No, it is not. They didn't even know where they were going sometimes and got lost and turned around. And the line here, which is also on the big map, shows how they zigzagged around and sometimes went back on themselves.
What were conditions like on the Centurion?
Pretty poor, actually. Most people got scurvy once or twice or maybe 3 times. It wasn't unusual if you came back missing a finger or a toe.
Presumably, he lost quite a lot of crew. How long was this voyage going on for?
So for 4 years, and during 4 years, he lost 1,400 men.
That's astonishing.
After years of appalling conditions and hardship, the Centurion caught up with the treasure-laden Spanish vessel, and a fierce, epic encounter ensued. The battle may only have raged for 30 minutes, but the fighting inflicted sharp losses on the Spanish side, with 67 killed and a further 84 seamen wounded. George's coveted naval skills ensured that not only did he capture the ship, but he did so with the loss of only 3 of his crew.
They finally capture this Spanish galleon. What happened to all that money?
George was very fair and shared it equally amongst the crew. Obviously, if you were the captain, you got more money than an able seaman at the bottom.
Some were more equal than others then, right. So he gets a big lump and then the next lump is divided evenly among the next rank and so on all the way down.
Yeah, and it was to stop fighting as well. And we've actually got a letter here that George wrote sort of as an insurance policy. And it does say, "Do you hereby covenant and agree to share all profits equally amongst us of all money that shall arise or become due to any of us?" And he actually wrote this so that even if people died or he died, that it was written down, so it was recorded, so everyone had a fair share.
Clearly, he needed to do this to keep them on side.
Yeah, George actually managed to go 4 years without a mutiny, and mutinies happened on other ships in that fleet, which is why there was only one ship, the Centurion, that came back in the end.
When he came back then, he came back to the house with this newfound wealth, which presumably helped Shugborough.
It did help Shugborough, and George gave Thomas some money to invest in the landscape and also the house. And when George died childless, he actually left his entire fortune to Thomas. So really, George Anson is the reason why you see Shugborough as it is today.
None of this would have happened except for this pioneering man, the father of the British Navy.
And that would probably be the case. You'd be coming to a much smaller house and a much smaller landscape, and it might not even exist now.
It's put one's own achievements into very sharp perspective, doesn't it?
It does.
There They were such a contrast, these brothers, weren't they? George, the buccaneering naval man, and Thomas, the stay-at-home one, fulfilling his artistic aspirations with this place, which is amazing.
Thomas is actually my favourite of the two brothers because he's got real vision. And at Shugborough, he really wanted to achieve the Grecian Arcadia.
He'd travelled as well, then. It wasn't just George.
He went on 2 grand tours. He went to Egypt. He sailed around the Greek islands. And so he was like really well travelled for the time. Like his brother George, he was a bit of an adventurer.
I love the fact that George is out there earning all the money and sending it back, and Thomas is spending it. They clearly got on extremely well.
There's some really great letters and stories between the two of them, so there was a lot of affection, I think.
You know, if I'd had a brother, I know which one I would rather have been. I would have sent the other one off around the world. Then I could have made something like this. What a wonderful thing to do.
Thomas was truly lucky to be able to invest George's pirate treasure here at Shugborough. And in doing so, he got to show off his creative flair for trend-setting design. He added 2 private wings to house an enormous library, which he filled with an extensive collection of classical books, a sumptuous drawing room, and a fabulous marble entrance hall to wow his many guests.
Was it his travels that were the inspiration for this great creation? I mean, going to Greece, going to these foreign countries, which would give him a taste for the exotic.
I think it did give him the taste of the exotic and sort of the grandiose as well. The Greek were really big on big monuments, big columns, and Thomas brought that back here. And Shugborough was a manor house, and then he increased the size of it, all to increase status and sort of his influence in the county.
Do you notice a difference between he and his brother in that his brother was after notoriety and making his name as well as after wealth and position?
I think Thomas did want to make a name for himself. He was a patron of music, of art. He was a passionate patron of up-and-coming people like James Athenian Stewart, who most of the landscape monuments are designed from. So he pushed forward artistic talent. And I think that's where he wanted to make his name. Rather than his brother, which was more about swashbuckling and adventure, he was more quiet and more about art.
Athenian Stewart is a famous name from that period, and so Thomas would have employed him to come up with these designs. He wasn't called Athenian for no reason at all. Here's a man who is into Greek architecture.
James Athenian Stewart rose from poverty to become one of the most influential men of British architecture. He risked his life travelling through the dangerous Ottoman Empire to be the first man to record accurately the monuments of classical Greece in his landmark book, The Antiquities of Athens. It was to become the blueprint for the style that would define an era. Shugborough's astonishing and splendid neoclassical landscape is largely down to Stewart's design prowess, with examples of his work scattered around the estate, such as the Arch of Hadrian and the Doric Temple. And Helen's taking me inside one such Greek monument, the Tower of the Winds, to get a peek at some of Thomas's rarely seen private letters, which paint a captivating picture of 18th century high society.
This is not what you expect from the outside. How astonishing. Gilded and plasterwork and, oh, beautiful.
It's really beautiful. It's one of my favourite places on the estate. Thomas was trying to recreate the Grecian landscape. In
Staffordshire?
In Staffordshire, without the weather. This was surrounded by a lake at one point, but before that there was a village surrounding it too, called Shugborough. And Thomas Anson built his monument in the middle of the village and then brought up each house and knocked them down so that their monument was standing on its own in the landscape.
That must have made him a popular man.
He actually moved them to the village of Great Haywood, which is just in the distance over that way. James Athenian Stewart also helped design some houses in the village, so he sort of gave him nicer houses to move into.
And you've got what over here?
So these are some drawings from a James Athenian Stewart to Thomas Anson, just some ideas of designs that he could choose and use in his landscape.
Isn't it wonderful to see the actual penmanship of Stewart? Obviously some kind of monument, whether it was ever built.
I think it was probably too fancy for Thomas, who preferred the simple Grecian architecture.
Yeah, and here, well, this is to Thomas Anson, Member of Parliament at Shugborough. So this is letters to and from Thomas to various people. This one is then from James Stewart to him. I enclose an answer to more queries which you directed Sleaford to send me concerning your house and the Tower of the Winds. So he's talking about this. So this is before this is built.
Yep.
This is the most wonderful collection of documents of that time, all with red seals on. Amazing. Joseph Nollekins, great sculptor of marble busts, I remember Nollekins. There's a good many English in Rome, Oxfordshire Lord Lennox and Lord Tilney, but all are going to Naples. Prince of Brunswick set off this morning for that city. They're all out there, aren't they?
They are.
Flocking to Naples. You suddenly get the flavour of the period forever. Your most obliged and humble servant, Joseph Nollekins, Rome, November the 1st, 1766.
Nollekins was sourcing things for Thomas in Rome and then sending them back to him, so Greek sculpture and antiquities.
I read about all these people and know them, but then to see letters from him with his seal on them, which are gossipy. And here, this is what?
So this is Thomas Anson's pocketbook where he wrote down journeys he went on. And this is one of the only examples of his handwriting we've actually got. He's a very neat writer.
It is. Worcester, Tilbury,
Yeah,
Buckingham,
very exotic.
Lancaster, America. Oh, America here in Channel.
His brother was based in America for a while, so he probably was visiting his brother.
We've got a list of the ships here. Centurion, Gloucester, Severn, Pearl, Wager, Trial. And there's Anson. Guns 60, men 50. He's keeping an eye on what his brother's doing. It really brings these people to life, doesn't it?
Really does.
Shugborough Hall rose to become the great mansion we see today because of two brothers. One, a fearless adventurer who funded it, and the other, whose extravagant imagination created it.
Between them, George and Thomas Anson laid the foundations that allowed Shugborough to flourish for centuries to come. In the 1800s, design again played a key part in Shugborough's success, with acclaimed architect Samuel Wyatt building a walled garden that was to achieve international fame. It's now senior gardener Caroline Beacall's job to keep them in tip-top condition. And that's no mean feat, with more than 1.5 acres of borders and beds to tend.
I love going in old walled gardens like this. You can just imagine what they were.
You can indeed, yeah.
Wistfully.
Designed in 1805, it used the very latest technology, including steam-heated greenhouses and chimney-heated walls, becoming a visitor attraction, with landed gentry travelling across the country to marvel at the exotic crops of pineapples and peaches. But the biggest secrets of this famed wall garden remain unseen by its many visitors.
So where are you taking me now?
I'm going to show you the Truffle Tunnel, which is down these steps.
Truffle
Be
Tunnel?
careful, because they're going to be a bit wet.
Yeah, I haven't seen these before.
Lying deep below ground, this secret network of tunnels is strictly out of bounds to the public.
What is this? Oh,
This is the Truffle Tunnel.
the Truffle Tunnel.
Yes.
Goodness me, it's huge.
It really is, and it keeps on going as well.
Presumably this was for growing mushrooms in there.
Yeah. The Truffle Tunnel's a posh term for it, so it was all about status. They didn't want to have a mushroom house, so they called it a Truffle Tunnel.
So greenhouses above, Truffle Tunnel, mushrooms below, no space wasted.
No space wasted, not at all.
What sort of mushrooms do they grow?
The field mushroom. So
Yeah.
you go into the supermarkets
Yeah.
and you get the little white mushrooms, that type. But then they might have left them to go really big, and the flat caps ones are ones you get stuffing.
Astonishing.
Yeah.
So they'd come down here, great big piles of muck, presumably, because
Yep.
mushrooms go on manure.
Yep, lots of horse muck, lots of it.
So who would have come down here and brought all the muck? Don't tell me. The gardeners.
Yes.
Who else could you get to do it?
But probably for the actual horse muck and all the smelly stuff, it would have been the young boys, the less skilled gardener. Ourselves probably wouldn't have.
We'd be pointing.
Yes, do that work.
Yes, yes. I used to have to do it. Why shouldn't you do it?
Exactly.
So, how far does it go on?
It keeps on going. Just keep on walking
Keep
through
on
the dark, yes.
Mushroom tunnels were all the rage in the 19th and early 20th century. They were the height of horticultural fashion, and any country estate worth its salt would have one. With 60 feet of tunnels and brick arches, all in full production in the 19th century, Shugborough's young gardeners would have been shovelling mountains of manure. It was with the advent of more industrial agricultural production that tunnels such as these fell into disuse.
Look, they've left one behind.
I have, yeah, a little wild one.
growing out. What an amazing slog. No wonder they got the youngsters to do it. It's a long way to come, all the way down those steps, along that tunnel, along this tunnel, out here, to fill these with manure and then to bring the soil for the casing.
Yeah, and to get rid of the old stuff as well.
Before you put the new
Exactly.
in.
Yes.
Gosh,
Yes.
it must have been thirsty work.
It really was. There's an account saying that they would have been entitled at the end of the day to 8 pints of beer a day.
That was part of their wages?
Part of their wages. It
Gosh,
would have been watered down beer. It wasn't the true beer, but yes.
I don't care, they would have needed them. Be grateful
really
for
was.
anything liquid.
The estate had its own on-site brewery, which is still in operation today. Payment in beer wasn't unique to Shugborough, and with workers across the country enjoying many a pint as part of their wages, hops were an important crop. Actor Lewis Emmerich is heading to Kent to discover more about the workers who brought in the hop harvest, and just like Shugborough's Truffle Tunnel gardeners, maybe enjoyed a pint or 8.
I'm here in Little Scotney Hop Farm to find out why people have been harvesting hops for hundreds of years, and how important are they to brewing the perfect pint. And the hop is the essential ingredient in any good pint of beer. For centuries, Kent has been famed for its hop fields. Every September, families would flee the poverty of London's East End for a working holiday at the hop harvest. In the late 19th century, as many as 200,000 people would make the annual pilgrimage in search of fresh air and extra cash. Volunteer estate guide Austin Clays is showing me around and filling me in on the history of the hop. You know, Austin, what is a hop?
A hop is a flower, and it's the flower of the hop plant. It's a member of the nettle family.
Really?
Believe it or not, yes. And some people call them cones rather than flowers because of the shape. This will increase in size over the next 3 weeks before they harvest. If you'd like to pull one open, inside you'll see it's got a yellow middle.
Oh, yeah.
That's the lupulin within the hop. And you can see it smells like you expect if you go into a brewery or into a pub. It only requires one of these in a pint of beer to give it the bitterness that's required. So they go a long way.
I mean, you need long arms. I mean, how to get...
Right, when we reach harvest time now, it's done by tractor and trailer. In the olden days, it would all be done by hand. And there would be a whole family working together around a large bin, pulling off the hops one by one at 90 miles an hour. And they could quite often strip a vine in just a few minutes. And it would be hard, back-breaking work. They would be standing for 12 hours, and then each day they would go to the farm to get their money for the amount of work they've done.
Plus their ale.
Plus their ale. But they probably get, what, 2 pence a bushel for filling one of those baskets up.
So, just like the gardeners at Shugborough, the hop pickers here at Scotney Farm were given much-deserved ale to supplement their wages after a long day's work picking in the summer hop fields. But despite the harsh conditions, it was the nearest many East End families ever came to a holiday, and they would return to the same farm year after year. I'm trying my hand at a spot of hop picking, the modern way. How you doing, mate? You all right? Can I have a go up there? On the back here? These days, we're 10 foot in the air on a platform. It's a good job I've got a head for heights. But back in the day, it would have been more challenging, with cutters working from the ground using long-handled scythes. Even today, it can still be tricky. That took me enough. This ain't meant for 6'3" guys, this one, I tell you. I tell you what, it's hard work, and you've got to keep on top of it. Hops is money. And for the pickers, the 4 weeks harvest could be the equivalent of 10 weeks' wages. Thank you. I've got the job, yeah? You know, cutting down these vines by hand was hard work as it is. But doing it without the help of modern machines and farming techniques back in the day, that must have been something else. No wonder, just like the gardeners at Shugborough, they enjoyed a few pints at the end of a long, back-breaking day. Now I'm off to meet Violet Charlton. She's 87, but as a child was a regular at the hop harvest. Hey, hey. What's going on here then? Now she comes with friends to relive the old days.
We've been coming down here now for 4 years.
Yeah.
Just to revive old memories.
What was it like then when you were a little kid doing this?
Well, it was all hand-picked in
I
one
noticed
go.
that they're a bit coarse. Did you used to scratch yourself on these things?
No, the string's a bit coarse,
Yeah.
but we used to play tug-of-war with these.
Did you?
Yeah, on a Saturday when the men folk came down, they'd get hold of these, because they're very strong.
Yeah.
And some would use them as skipping ropes.
Oh, would they?
Yeah.
Oh, we better get picking, eh, then?
Yeah, you need to get picking. No, I'm not going to stop. I haven't got a bucket, see, and I can't throw anymore because I've got a frozen shoulder.
See you all later. While it was undoubtedly hard work, Violet's recollections reveal a strong sense of community amongst the pickers. And, sticking with tradition, I'm leaving with a few bottles of beer for my troubles.
Payment in kind for my hot picking efforts. Maybe we'll be back next summer after all.
Back at Shugborough Hall, life above stairs at this spectacular mansion was one of opulence and extravagance, with no expense spared on the finer things in life. Fast forward to the 20th century, and the estate is now home to a different kind of fast living, with its resident-in-chief being Patrick, 5th Earl of Lichfield. This saw Shugborough take the world of high fashion and glamour by storm. Second cousin to the Queen, Patrick was an icon of the swinging 60s, a globe-trotting socialite, and his stately home became a magnet for the rich and famous. The Playboy Earl was never far from the pages of glossy magazines in his world-renowned role as photographer to high society and royalty. So it's a real treat to have a behind-the-scenes tour of his private apartments. The Trust's Gemma Roberts is showing me round.
I remember when I came and interviewed him here, he was very keen on the estate, particularly his arboretum.
She's giving me an exclusive insight into the private life of a very public man.
It's a very 70s kitchen. Do you know, we were given that Tupperware as a wedding present.
He may have found fame travelling the world, photographing the rich and famous, but his heart was always at home here in Shugborough.
You know, it's as if Patrick's just stepped out, really, isn't it? I knew him a bit, and here we are in his dressing room. You know, he's just a couple of rooms away, isn't he? So do you still feel he's here in a way?
Yes, definitely. I mean, all these clothes were his, and it just feels like he might just be in the sitting room.
When did he come to live here and take up residence?
He spent a lot of time here as a child, so with his sister, and when his grandfather died in 1960, he inherited the title of the 5th Earl of Lichfield, and although a lot of the property was National Trust owned by that point, he leased this apartment until his death in 2005.
His 35-room apartment was a small part of the mansion, but filled with his personal possessions and mementos, these rooms offer a rare glimpse of Patrick Lichfield, the private man.
What got him into photography in the first place?
Well, there are stories of him borrowing his grandfather's box brownie when he was a child from the hall table and taking photographs of the cows and the estate and then popping it back as if nobody knew.
So he was hooked from an early age?
From an early age, yeah, and I think he had his first camera when he was about 6.
Now, second cousin of the Queen, that royal connection can have done him no harm at all when it came to becoming a society photographer.
Yeah, he was very comfortable in those circles. Also, they were comfortable with him.
Yes, it must have worked both ways,
relaxed.
mustn't it? Yeah, so he got the poses he wanted, which weren't poses at all. He got the naturalness because they were used to having him around.
Yeah, yes.
He travelled and travelled and travelled. There are charts on one of the walls here of his calendar. He's absolutely everywhere. He's barely at home.
Yes, off in all sorts of places. On those calendars, it's quite nice to see the occasional weekend here at Shugborough slotted in.
So what sort of people stayed here? Give me an idea whom I might have stumbled upon had I been here for the weekend.
So people like Princess Margaret, Princess Anne, Mick Jagger. But Patrick in his career also photographed a lot of other up-and-coming models and film stars such as Marlon Brando and Elizabeth Taylor, Britt Eklund.
What a glittering life we had here in the middle of Staffordshire.
Yes, unknown.
If you look at his ancestors, George the adventurer, Thomas the artistic one. Patrick seems to have been a direct combination of the two things.
Yes, like the Anson family have always been pushing the boundaries and doing things differently, and I think that's what Patrick was doing with his photography.
The ultimate artistic adventurer, perfect combination of his ancestors.
Yes.
But none of Patrick's iconic photography would have been possible without the 19th century inventor, William Henry Fox Talbot. He was one of the first scientists to master the photographic techniques that transformed the 20th century. Miriam O'Reilly's heading to the National Trust's Laycock Abbey in Chippenham, where Fox Talbot took his first photograph.
Laycock Abbey was built in the 13th century, but it wasn't until 1827, when the scientist and inventor William Henry Fox Talbot moved in, that it became forever known as the birthplace of photography. I'm meeting curator Roger Watson, who knows everything there is to know about this pioneer of photography. So this is Fox Talbot's study. This is where he invented photography.
Well, he really invented photography in his head, but he did most of the work on it here and certainly the writing on it here.
Why was he so keen to create this image that he could keep?
Well, it starts on his honeymoon in October 1833. He was at Lake Como in Italy. He was trying to draw some of the scenes.
He wasn't any good at drawing.
He was terrible. He was terrible. So he began to think, as a scientist would, is there a mechanical, scientific way of drawing pictures without having to have any skill or talent? And he came back to Laycock and in 1834 began his experiments. By August 1835, he'd shot his first negative with a camera.
So we can say that Fox Talbot was the father of photography.
He was indeed.
Fox Talbot's technique involved creating a negative image on paper within a camera. He could then create as many positive images from the negative as he liked. This method became the foundation of all photography, right up until the digital age. Laycock Abbey has a collection of cameras that tracks the history of photography.
Come right inside.
Look at this. I'm getting privileged access to the whole collection, not seen by the public.
We've got everything from some of the earliest cameras, 1840s, 1850s, all the way up to more modern cameras, cameras you would recognize from your own lifetime.
Are some of the pieces here one-offs? How rare are those?
When you start at the beginning of photography, you start with objects which are specially made, each one. That doesn't have a manufacturer's name on it because there was no manufacturer. You would have an optical instrument maker make the lens, you would have a cabinet maker make the body, and you would put it all together and you had photography.
Does it still work?
Old cameras always still work because there's nothing to break in them. No batteries to go down, no shutters to stick, none of that kind of thing.
Show me some of the other treasures you have here.
I'd love to. These are calotype negatives, which were Talbot's invention. So we have a nice little country cottage.
It's beautiful. And what date?
This is probably 1840s. We don't know who the artist is. They're shot using Fox Talbot's process, but they're not by him.
Do you have another one we can look at? I didn't think, though, that these negatives still existed.
They're rare. You really don't come across them very often, but they've survived quite well. I'm surprised at how basically nobody under 20 seems to know what a negative is anymore.
In 1839, Fox Talbot presented his photographs for the first time at an exhibition he held in Birmingham. And contemporary artist Matt Collishaw has brought Fox Talbot's earliest photographs back to life by recreating the exhibition exactly as it was in 1839, but using new virtual reality technology. I was lucky enough to catch Matt during the touring exhibition's run here at Laycock Abbey. This is just a white room. Where's the exhibition?
Well, you're going to have to put on the headset and then go in, and everything inside that room will have colour and texture and content overlaid on what you're seeing now.
Is this the only way to see Fox Talbot's earliest photographs? Because many of them have been destroyed and others that do survive are locked away.
Yeah, well, obviously you can see them in digital reproductions, but I put those reproductions here, so it's going back to that first experience of seeing the pictures.
Time to see this exhibition for myself. Although this white room may look strange to the naked eye, It's designed to work in conjunction with the virtual reality headset to create a multi-sensory experience.
Yeah. Boom! I'm in a cathedral-like room. This is extraordinary. I've been transported back in time. And in the cases, there are photographs. I'm hoping if I do this... It's just right in front of me. This is the photograph Fox Talbot took of a window outside. You can't see this picture in real life, but I can see it now. I can move it around. I'll put it back in the cabinet.
How's that?
That is one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life. I wasn't even quite sure what to make of it.
Isn't reality a little bit disappointing when you come back to it?
I don't want to leave 1839.
Matt has done an amazing job of using the latest technologies to bring the past back to life. It's fascinating to be here at the birthplace of photography and to experience Fox Talbot's work in a whole new dimension. You have to wonder where it will lead us.
Back at Shugborough, I'm exploring the life of Patrick, 5th Earl of Lichfield, world famous for his fashion and celebrity photographs. But he was also a trusted photographer to the royal family, and I'm getting an exclusive scoop on Patrick's working relationship with the royals from Ian Lewis, his former assistant.
It struck me as one of life's enthusiasts.
Oh, yes. Passionate.
Yes.
To the core.
Yeah.
When you were being photographed by him, his enthusiasm would take over and he'd get more and more and more excited.
You, at the studios particularly, encountered so many people. There's an autograph book here. Lichfield Studios, June 1991. Colin Cowdrey, Ronnie Corbett, Jasmine Le Bon, George Melly. It's a catalogue of show business, really. Terry Wogan, several times.
The whole gamut. It was a fabulous place to work, and you never knew who was going to come through the door next.
Now, as a society photographer, of course, and second cousin of the Queen, there were lots of royal photo shoots. Did you go on those?
Yes, yeah, I was involved in the Jubilee portraits in 2002.
Of the Queen?
We were given a very small time slot of 5 minutes. We went and recce'd the location at Buckingham Palace, which was a long corridor. But Patrick had a wonderful idea of taking a profile shot as well as the corridor shot, which was great, but in 5 minutes, that's not enough time to do 2 different setups.
That's tough.
Patrick knew that the Queen was easy to photograph. She was incredibly professional, always turned up on time, unlike a lot of other celebrities. So he had us all in the studio rehearsing each shot with a stopwatch.
Did it work? Did you do
Absolutely. It ran perfectly.
Like clockwork.
Exactly.
You must look back upon those days with affection. Did you learn a lot from Patrick Lichfield?
Oh, yeah, an incredible amount. And when I started, I was trying to stay out of the way as much as possible. By the time I left, I realised that it was actually, photography was mostly about interaction and people. You have to be enthusiastic, and all the things that came naturally to him was all was learning experience for me.
So pressing the shutter was but a small part of it?
Very, very small.
Shugborough Hall is a spectacular neoclassical mansion. Its rise from humble beginnings to high-end fashion is a story spanning 4 centuries and an intoxicating mix of courage, artistry and glamour, making it a family home which changed the course of history.
Shugborough was opened by the National Trust in March 2017, which means that we can now all come and enjoy the neoclassical splendour and captivating history of this remarkable estate.